My name is Cheryl Bicknell. I'm a senior project manager for facilities and services, and I'm one of the members of the facilities and services diversity and inclusion committee, and the communications committee, just for people who are on campus or even people within facilities and services who may not know. We organize and plan monthly meetings almost every month of the year, and we look for celebrations of people and who represent different parts of our culture. And for this month, it happens to be Women's History Month, but we also always look for an expert to speak always on different topics. And this month, Raksha Mudar has agreed to speak with us about some of the research that she's doing on campus. And as you know, her topic is ways to boost brain health. And so if you'll give me just a second, I think there's a nice introduction in the information that we sent out, but I wanted to give you a little bit more detail. So just a little bit. Well, Raksha, if you want to add more, you're welcome to.
Sure. Sounds good.
So Raksha is the Associate Professor and Director of Studies in the Department of Speech and Hearing Science, or you can correct me too, that's okay. She has a PhD in Communication Sciences and Disorders from the University of Texas at Dallas. She operates the Aging and Neural Cognition Lab on campus, ANCL. It has a website that you can go to. The research goals for this particular unit are to understand how age and age-related conditions like mild cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and age-associated hearing loss impact higher order cognitive functions, and also to develop cognitive and social engagement approaches to enhance and maintain brain health in older adults. I wanted to mention that she does have some awards on campus that are always fun to point out. She has often been a teacher ranked as excellent for the University of Illinois. And she also is an AHS Excellence in Graduate Student Mentoring Award. And those are things that I find important. One of her grants that she's received lately is integrating voice activation technology with a social engagement platform for older adults with and without mild cognitive impairment in assisted living. So I had the great honor and pleasure of speaking to Raksha before we officially booked her, and I'm particularly excited about her topic. I think I mentioned to her that I listened to Hidden Brain a lot with Shankar Vedantam on my NPR station, and so I've heard a little bit about this, but never been engaged with an expert in this topic. So with that, Raksha, if you want to go ahead and be the presenter, we're deeply honored to have you here today.
Good afternoon, everybody. I know it's raining outside, so I know you're not missing any sunny weather outside. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this FNS Diversity and Inclusion virtual event. Cheryl and I exchanged many different emails before we could connect, and I was super excited when she mentioned what's the goal and purpose of this group. I'm glad to be here, and she's already given a wonderful introduction. Just to reiterate a little bit, my lab is Aging and Neurocognition Laboratory. It's part of the Applied Health Sciences, College of Applied Health Sciences. My home department is Speech and Hearing Science, but while it sounds like I should just be doing speech therapy, majority of my 25 years as a career-wise, majority of my 25 years has been spent studying brain health and issues surrounding brain health as we get older. As you can see, the title of my talk here is ways in which we can boost brain health. So just by, I know some of you joined just on the phone. I was just wondering if those of you who can respond, how many of you have heard about brain health or thought about brain health? If you can just use the reaction portion of the Zoom button, I just want to see how many have heard of this term. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I see some of you have, so that's great. And so that really helps me craft what I'm going to share today. The plan I have is to share 3 things this afternoon. One, to really give you information about what is brain health from more of the scientific perspective, and also see how it's situated in the context of our day-to-day life, and talk a little bit about what happens to our brain health as we get older. Not particularly 60 plus, but older as in it's relevant to every particular age. And then talk about some simple ways in which we can start thinking about our brain health, supporting our brain health, and boosting our brain health. So 3 things, if that can be the take home from this talk, that I've achieved my goal then. So the idea of brain health is fairly new. Most of us get our annual physicals done. None of us get our annual brain health check done. That's because the idea itself is new. Brain health is multidimensional in nature. The idea of brain health is that each of us are in a state where we can realize our abilities and potential and cope with all the life situations that we have to go through across the lifespan. And brain health is, like I said, multidimensional, and there are key components that relate to brain health, and you can see them represented here in my slide. It includes cognitive health, social health, and emotional health. For the purposes of this talk, I will largely be focusing on the cognitive health piece of it. So before we even go any further, I just want to be sure that we have a shared understanding of what cognition is. The idea, you've heard the term, what does it do? What does it mean? Cognition simply refers to mental operations and processes that help us think, remember, create memories, learn, problem solve, make decisions. Essentially, it is what allows us to be who we are, and it allows us to interact with our environments and have the life we choose to have. In some ways, we need to keep in mind that these mental operations are extremely important, and that's what, in some ways, represents cognitive health. Now that we have established what cognition and what cognitive health is, I am going to move on. So that's just described to you here. But let's talk a little bit about what happens to our brain health and cognitive health as we get older. Aging is one of the biggest threats to brain health and cognitive health. Why is that? Because as we get older, across the lifespan, as there are numerous anatomical and physiological changes that occur in our body. What happens as a result of this is that we become more predisposed to chronic health conditions. The most common chronic health conditions, such as diabetes, hypertension, stroke, hearing loss, Alzheimer's disease. Now, the direct impact of these chronic health conditions is that it negatively impacts all aspects of brain health: the cognitive health, social health, and emotional health. Well, a lot of people say, oh, I don't have to worry. I'm just in my mid-30s, or I'm in my mid-40s, I'm in my mid-50s. But everybody on the Zoom call today, most of us, or all of us here, we expect to live into our 60s and beyond. So it's really important that we start learning about cognitive health and really to take better care of ourselves, as well as to support the people around us who may be much older than we are. So in that vein, it's really important for us to start thinking about cognitive health. Believe it or not, by 2030, 1 in 6 will be 60 years or older. What you see in this slide is trends related to global aging. You can see in 2015, there were 8.5% of the world's population was 65 years or older. We are expecting this to double by 2050. So the question then is, what's happening? It's all good because the life expectancy has drastically increased in the past 200 years. As you can see in this is just indications, and this is not unique to United States. This is true across the world, that we are all living longer. And that is wonderful. That is good news. That is showing us that we have made great strides in reducing premature death that comes from preventable and treatable diseases. But we don't just want to live longer. We want to live with grace and dignity, and knowing that as we get older, our brain health is more vulnerable, it's really important for us to start thinking about our brain health. So 2 important questions come up in this context. The first question is, what happens to our cognitive health as we get older? Because it's important to understand what are some normal changes that we anticipate or we expect that would occur as we get older. And we also need to know what are some changes that are concerning that would require attention from a medical professional so that we can get the support that we need in order for us to keep our brain health strong. The second question is, what are the things that we can do beginning now to support our brain health and to boost our brain health? So we'll try and get to both of these questions. So I want to first start off sharing this graph that talks about, this figure that talks about how our cognitive abilities really varies. Each of us, as we get older, we will have varying cognitive abilities. And what you see here is a broad representation of that. On the left side here in the circled portion, you see those of us who will age normally in terms of our cognitive skills. What does that mean? I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail in subsequent slides, but very quickly, it means that we will experience subtle changes in our memory, thinking, concentration, learning, problem solving, speed of processing, all of those things. But these changes are really small. It does not impact our functional ability. We adapt and we move on. So the aspirational goal is all of us want to be in this healthy or typical cognitive aging space. But that's not always the case. There are individuals who might experience more than normal changes in cognitive abilities. These are more than what's expected for their age, more than what's expected for their education. These are individuals in this middle portion, and they're referred to as mild cognitive impairment. While they're experiencing mild changes, they still are able to function well, carry on with their day-to-day activities. The only thing is when people are starting to experience more than normal changes in their cognitive function, they are more susceptible to developing more serious cognitive decline, such as dementia. And the dementia portion is what's represented on the right part here in the figure, in this box. These are individuals who are experiencing really chronic cognitive decline that really requires them to depend on people around them to carry on their day-to-day activities. Like I said, we all want to stay in this healthy box. So let's learn a little bit more about what happens to our cognitive abilities as we get older. What we've learned from decades of research is that our cognitive ability is related to our ability to process information quickly, ability to retain information. These two decline as we get older. Believe it or not, just to really unpack this graph for you, this is indicating that some of the cognitive changes begin to occur as early as in our mid-20s. Whereas not everything is doom and gloom. There are other things as we get older, stay stable, such as our world knowledge. These are referred to as crystalline intelligence skills. They stay stable as we get older, but a lot of other things related to memory functioning, speed of processing declines beginning mid-20s. Interestingly, these changes also correspond to changes that occur in the brain. Let me just go over what you're seeing here on the screen. This figure shows age-related changes in the brain volume in various areas of the brain. This is the front part of the brain, which is lateral prefrontal cortex right here in the front, primary visual cortex, which is all the way in the back, and hippocampus, which is deep inside here. What you're seeing in this figure is that it's showing that there is steady decline in the front part of our brain. Lateral prefrontal cortex volume declines as we get older, and you can see here, this is on the x-axis, you have age. You start to see the decline as early as mid-20s, and it continues to decline as we get older. And this area of the brain is really important for our ability to hold information, plan, problem solve, set goals. So you can see that brain's already changing as we get older. Want to start off, go next to this graph here on the extreme right side. This is the hippocampus. This is the area of the brain that helps us remember things. What this graph is showing us is that up until the 60s, overall, the brain volume in this region stays stable, but it starts to decline after. No wonder we start experiencing more memory-related issues as we get older. Like I said, not everything changes. There are some things that stable as we get older, and you can see that in the center graph here. It's the visual processing areas at the back of the brain. They remain stable as we get older. Now, that's a lot of information, right? While it seems really alarming to see all that cognitive and brain changes begins around mid-20s, I just want to highlight a few things. Not all cognitive functions decline. So as we get older, and these are normal age-related changes that we're talking about, majority of the cognitive changes that occur are really, really small. So we won't even notice as we are getting older that these changes are occurring, or maybe we do, but it does not impact our day-to-day functioning. That's what's important. And each of us will age differently when it comes to our cognitive abilities. So individual differences are big. But what we have learned is no matter what, at any age, our brain has the capacity. We call this the neuroplastic potential. We can exercise our brain, strengthen our brain, and minimize the impact of these subtle changes that occur as we get older. So the next question then is, how can we support and boost our brain health as we age? So I'm going to talk about a broad range of things that we can do. A lot of things that I am going to share here are things that you already know. This is just an opportunity for me to put it all together in perspective in relation to what we are learning from scientific studies. So you know that there is evidence for this so that you can incorporate some of these best practices into your own life. So what's the first thing we can do? Changing how we think, feel, and act towards age and aging and combating ageism. That's the first thing that we should do to support our brain health. Ageism primarily refers to negative views about older people, negative views about our own selves aging. Believe it or not, you can ask me, how is that connected to brain health? Studies have shown that those who carry negative perceptions about aging, that is, who have ageism, their lifespan reduces. One of the studies showed that the lifespan can reduce by 7.5 years. So you can see that there's a relationship. How we view aging impacts our lifespan, or how long we live. There's also studies that show those who have negative views about aging, their physical health is not that great, their mental health is not great, and their social well-being is not great. All of these are components of brain health. Now, one way to think about ageism is aging and ageism is, let's take a pause to see what impacts it has and how can we change how we feel about aging by thinking about all the positives aging brings with it. Just the fact that as we get older, living longer means more opportunities. As we age, we can contribute in many ways to our families and communities, and keeping that constantly in mind is one way to start thinking about aging more positively. So let's start thinking about aging more positively so that we can turn our life longevity into more of an asset for the society. So that's one of the first ways in which we can actually boost or support our brain health. Now, the second thing is seeking help when there are changes in cognitive functions. Now, we talked about lots of things change as we get older. So the question always comes, what is normal, what's not? It's hard to parse out because all of us, I'm sure, at least I can speak for myself, we've all experienced memory slips at one time or the other. We've either forgotten an appointment, missed a friend's birthday, struggle to remember somebody's name. Well, we don't worry about those things when we are younger, but as we start to get older, these slips start to worry us. We start worrying about all the bad things. We think it's something serious. So the best way we deal with it is to avoid thinking about it and make excuses for it. So an alternate approach would be to learn more about what are the changes that are normal and what are the changes that are concerning. So what I'm going to do next is to share about 10 concerning early signs and symptoms where it would be important to really talk to your health provider about your experiences or anybody you know around if they're experiencing these early signs and symptoms, to have a conversation with the physician to figure out what is going on, because a lot of the times it is something that is easily treatable. So what are those early signs and symptoms? So let's go over some of them. To begin with, it's not, like I said, uncommon for us to forget names, appointments, but we remember them later. That's part of normal aging. When an individual experiences memory changes that disrupts their daily life, such as they forget what they ate or who they talked to, they keep asking the same questions, but they forget what they were told, or they forget important events. These are more concerning changes that one needs to pay attention to and perhaps bring it up with their physician so that it can be dealt with in some ways that, have a conversation, get the conversation going, and then decide how to move forward. Second concerning sign. Most of us make occasional errors when we do complex activities as we get older. Examples are like when we are managing our finances, working on our taxes, making health insurance decisions. There may be some errors that we make and then we fix them as we go along. Those are all normal things. But when an individual experiences challenges in planning and problem solving, things that they have always done in their past without problems, but now are struggling with it, those are concerning changes. Such as if suddenly an individual who has always been good about paying their bills on time, manage their checkbooks and balance their checkbooks without a problem, suddenly if they start having problems with any of those things, that's concerning. If an individual has challenges dealing with day-to-day problems, example, your car breaks down, don't have cash at home, can't find your card, you need to get to an appointment, what do I do? Perhaps call a friend, a relative, or somebody who can drive you. But those are simple solutions that we come up with. If such situations really create a lot of anxiety. And if the person's not able to problem solve, those are concerning signs. Next, occasional difficulty with carrying on complex tasks. That's normal as we get older. Sometimes you're asked to take on new tasks. Sometimes you're asked to take on new tasks with new technology, new equipments, and it's okay. It takes a little longer for us to get used to it. A lot of us, me included, don't always like change. And we don't always like when new policies and procedures and tasks are required of us. That's because, it challenges us a bit. But, we get used to it and then we get comfortable with it. That's normal. But when an individual has difficulty completing familiar tasks, such as driving to a usual location or putting their grocery list together, those are concerning changes that require a discussion with a medical professional. Next, occasional confusion about day of the week. All of us have had that. You go on a vacation, you don't know if it's Wednesday or it's Thursday, but you get caught up pretty quickly. But if an individual's experiencing confusion with time on a regular basis, they're losing track of dates, they're not able to keep up what time of the day it is, they're not sure what season it is, these are concerning changes in cognition that needs to be addressed. Other things, such as we get older, we experience changes in our vision. Maybe we need a change of prescription. Maybe, an individual develops cataract and requires some surgical intervention to correct it. Those are typical age-related changes. But when it becomes concerning is when the person is able to see, but they are not able to process visual information. For instance, they can see everything, but they don't understand what they're reading, or they have difficulty with visuospatial processing, as in they're not able to judge the distance of where they are against the objects around them. Those are concerning signs that really warrant a discussion with a provider. The next thing, word finding problems. All of us have had those. We call it the tip of the tongue phenomena. A lot of the times we say, I know what I want to say, but I can't think, the word's not coming. And all of us experience that. That's occasional word finding problem is normal. But when individuals start experiencing these word finding problems at a greater frequency, and to the extent that they're not able to follow some complex constructs in conversation, those are concerning changes in cognitive health and brain health that require attention. Misplacing things. We all misplace things from time to time, but we are pretty much able to retrace and find what we have misplaced. But when an individual misplaces things and they are not able to retrace at all things that they have misplaced, those are concerning signs, especially if this occurs very often. So the frequency of it is an indicator that these are some concerning changes that require attention. What about bad decision making? We all make bad decisions once in a while and make mistakes, like you shouldn't have had that extra slice of pizza, and then you end up having heartburn that night. So we all make those bad decisions, but really those impacts are really small and temporary, and that's fine. But when there are individuals who are making these big decisions that indicate their judgment or their decision making is altered, those are concerning signs. I've had people who come into our lab who talk about family members who have just sold their homes at a big, without consulting with anybody and losing a lot of money, or investing in something that is for sure not going to yield anything. And if this person has never done or exhibited this kind of behavior before, but now is exhibiting poor judgment in decision making, those are concerning signs that require attention. Being uninterested in family and social obligations. We've all been there. All of us have hard days at work or weeks that we put in those extended hours, and we just want to be on our own without having to mix and mingle and engage in social activities. That's normal. But when an individual feels that way and really withdraws from social interactions, social activities over extended periods of time, that's not normal. That requires some attention. The last concerning sign and symptom I'm going to talk about is feeling irritated, mood swings. These are things sometimes all of us feel like we just are on the edge. We are very irritable because, people have altered our routines and they're asking too much from us, but it's temporary. You have that feeling and it goes away. But if an individual starts to experience changes in mood swings and there are some big changes in personality, those are concerning signs. So what I've shared here is really what's normal versus what are concerning. What I want to reiterate here is when people are experiencing concerning signs and symptoms, they don't always mean that they have Alzheimer's disease or some big disorder that has no treatment. A lot of the times concerning changes in cognition might be induced by maybe a side effect of a medication, maybe some kind of a vitamin deficiency, maybe a metabolic disorder, maybe something related to a person's lack of sleep. So it's really important, even when these concerning signs and symptoms are being observed, not to jump to conclusion that this is worst case scenario. Knowing that there's many different reasons these cognitive changes may occur is absolutely crucial. So we've talked about two ways to boost our brain health and support brain health. One is combating ageism. Two, making sure when any early signs of cognitive changes are observed, to be more vigilant, and if it reoccurs, to have a frank conversation to see what's going on so that the help that is needed is received in order to move past these barriers. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is hearing. Our ability to hear is absolutely important. That's we hear the sounds that we are surrounded by. That's how we connect to our immediate environments. And one of the things we know as we get older is issues related to hearing become more prevalent. So if there are issues that relate to hearing, it's important to seek help rather than to say, I don't want a hearing aid. I don't think it's a big deal. What we are learning from research is that hearing loss increases the risk of cognitive decline and incident dementia. So really, believe it or not, research that has been done by Franklin's group at Hopkins has found that mild hearing loss doubles the risk of dementia. Moderate hearing loss triples the risk of dementia. Severe hearing loss increases the risk by 5 times if no treatment is used, if a person does not seek out a hearing aid or amplification or some form of a treatment. Seeking help if experiencing changes in hearing is one of the most important ways you can protect your brain health. So talking to a provider about difficulty with hearing will warrant a referral to an audiologist, who will then test hearing and decide if a hearing aid would be beneficial. We are all comfortable wearing glasses, so hearing aids are no different. Now we have really small hearing aids that can be programmed to the person's hearing loss, and they're very beneficial. So we can really minimize the risk of changes in our brain health related to hearing loss by taking that immediate action by seeking help. Okay? So that's the third thing we can do to support and boost our brain health. A few other things that are really important, and there's more and more work related to this, relates to staying cognitively engaged. Engagement in cognitively stimulating activities is related to better memory in midlife and reduced risk of dementia in later life. A lot of the times people ask me, Do I need to learn a second language? Do I need to do Sudoku? Now, do I need to do Wordle? Lots of people think that those are the kinds of activities that they have to do in order to stay cognitively engaged. But what is cognitively stimulating varies from person to person. I always remind people, do what cognitively challenges you, but also do things that you enjoy, not things that you don't. So some examples of cognitively stimulating activities include reading books and magazines that you enjoy reading. So, but thinking about the information you read a little bit more deeply. And in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about some of the studies that I have done with my collaborators and what we've found. But before that, let's talk a little bit more about other cognitively stimulating activities, playing strategy games, taking a class or teaching a class or teaching your coworkers new skills, that constitutes cognitively stimulating activity. Learning a new skill, learning, taking on a new hobby, that would be considered cognitively stimulating. And volunteering, connecting with people and giving back. All of these things that I'm listing here, there is evidence from research, and I've just listed a couple of papers here that support that these simple activities can really support and boost our brain health. What we did in a few of our studies here, you can see that, we did work with individuals who were aging normally, as well as those who were experiencing mild changes in memory. In a series of these studies, our only goal was to teach people how to think deeply about the things that they are reading, hearing, seeing. And we wanted to see what does that do to a person's cognitive ability. As part of the study, what we did was we taught individuals 4 strategies to improve their ability to process information more deeply. The first strategy, I have them listed here. You can see the 4 strategies. The first strategy is inhibit or select. We taught our participants how to learn to block unwanted information when you're reading, listening, or doing something, so that you can select the most important and relevant information. Especially in this age of technology, we are inundated with so much information. We need to learn to block and select only things that really are important to us. So the second strategy we taught people is, like, once they learn to select things that are most important to them, we taught them how to organize that information into a way that was more purposeful, whether it's based on concepts or themes or whatever it is that made more sense to them. So first selecting what is important, then organizing it into a way that makes sense. The third strategy we taught them is, a lot of the times when you hear, read, see things, you don't have all the information. You have to make some inferences, and that's a good thing. Making those inferences, you're working various areas of the brain that actually boosts your brain health. So we taught them how to fill in those gaps when all the information is not available. And the last strategy we taught them was how to integrate this information. We taught them how to put it all together into a broader context of using life experiences and their world knowledge. Just being able to, when you're watching TV or reading something, applying these strategies is cognitively stimulating. And what we found from that particular study is people showed big changes in memory and big changes in cognitive abilities. We followed up that study to figure out what was happening in the brains of these individuals. And what we observed was that when individuals, these were older adults who were aging normally and those who had mild cognitive impairment, when we looked into their brains after they had practiced these strategies for a few weeks, we found that blood flow in brain regions that are really important for complex activities improved a lot. And interestingly, we also found that the connections in the brain regions strengthened. We call them white matter pathways. White matter connects various regions of the brain. And we saw that actually the connections grew stronger. And all this was just with few hours of practicing these strategies. Just to show you, when we talk about cognitive engagement, it does not have to really be something fancy. It can be done just by thinking about information deeply. The next thing that you can do to support brain health is to really be socially engaged. There's evidence to suggest that social engagement is protective against cognitive decline and incident dementia. Now, we've found that cognitive engagement actually improves overall physical health. It improves the social network of individuals and makes a person feel better. It enhances their mental health. Now, intergenerational programs have found to be particularly beneficial in strengthening social and cognitive health. I want to give one example from research. This was a program that is now widely adopted by AARP. It's called the Experience Score. In this particular study, what they did was, it's an intergenerational program where they engaged adults aged 50 years or older as literacy tutors for children who were struggling in public schools. Amazingly enough, they found that these participants, older adults who participated in this program, showed big boosts in their cognitive abilities, and their social participation improved quite a bit. So just to tell you what we are doing here on campus, my lab, supported by a grant from the National Institute of Health in collaboration with Dr. Wendy Rogers, we are conducting a study to see, can we do these kinds of social engagement over a video technology platform? We use a platform called OneClick. It's very similar to Zoom. So what we are having participants do is attend 6 weeks of social engagement events. All of these are individuals who are 60 years or older. They attend these social engagement events, and in these events, they just have casual conversations about topics of shared interest, such as travel, music, technology, etc. And we are helping them connect on this video technology. It's meeting their social needs. They're getting an opportunity to reflect, to talk to others, especially who care about the same topics. A lot of the times we're surrounded by people, but they are not interested in talking about the same things we are interested in. So what we are finding is that we are finding some great improvements in social health and quality of life. We are finishing a large trial right now. It will end in May. We'll have more information about really what are the other benefits that we are seeing once we finish the trial. Other things that you can do to boost your brain health: staying physically active. Physical activity, and you've heard about the importance of exercise. This is not something new, but what we're learning is physical activity is related to brain health. Physical activity can significantly reduce dementia and Alzheimer's disease. 150 minutes of a week of exercise, like brisk walking, dancing, anything that you enjoy is beneficial. A lot of the times it is important, and this just shows how can you incorporate physical activities. You don't have to go to the gym. You just have to find ways to fit being active into your daily routine, whether it's walking a dog or doing anything else that will help you move. And also picking activities that you enjoy. You do not have to go to the gym. A lot of people say, I don't have the time, I don't have resources. Just doing activities that you enjoy, whether it's dancing, cycling, and making it social. Finding somebody else to do it with you actually increases motivation. And a lot of the times I used to exercise a lot, but not anymore. I always say, get back there, even if it means you have to start slowly. And keeping track of how you're doing with your physical activity, whether it's a step counter or a smartphone, just looking at the data on a daily basis actually boosts your motivation. And we know physical activity is really useful for supporting brain health. Eating right. Again, this is something that you've heard before. I want to talk about brain health or brain power foods. Green veggies such as kale, spinach, broccoli, they are rich and they support brain health. Nutrients like vitamin K and beta carotene in these really support our brain health. Fatty fish like salmon, the omega-3 fatty acids that are part of it really supports brain health, and it actually flushes out some of the bad proteins that might accumulate in the brain, these proteins that cause Alzheimer's disease. So that's really good if you like eating fish. Berries, we know, help improve memory. In moderation, tea and coffee can boost your ability to focus and attend to information. And walnuts, excellent source of protein that really supports memory. Just trying to include some of these things. You don't have to change your diet drastically if that's not the way you want to do it, but just including some of these foods in your daily eating habits really can be one way to support brain health. Also trying to shift our eating habits. It's hard. Believe it or not, I understand how hard it is. I have Lunchables for lunch today. And you'll probably laugh at that because I have a 15-year-old and didn't have time to pack lunch. So we all eat things that we shouldn't sometimes, but making sure that we compensate the rest of the day to try and incorporate more healthy stuff, such as choosing more nutrient-dense snacks, such as carrots and fruits, and choosing whole grains, and really dropping those snacks that have a lot of added salt or sugars, and substituting healthy oils like olive oil instead of solid fats. These are simple ways in which it really makes a difference in terms of our overall health and well-being, but definitely in terms of supporting cognitive health. I have a couple more things to add before I wrap up here. I know we are running short of time. It's 12:51 here on my clock. Two more things. And again, you've heard about these things before. Managing stress levels, figuring out what are those things that trigger stress. I know that it's just impossible to get rid of stress in our lives because most of us have lots of things going on in our day-to-day life. But being able to find ways to decompress every single day is really essential, whether it's through journaling or figuring out if you can do some mindfulness meditation or whatever works best for you to, turning on the music and just staying in the zone for some time to decompress is really important for brain health, because the cortisols that are released when we are stressed impacts our cognitive aging. So managing stress is absolutely important. Similarly, developing healthy sleeping habits. It's becoming harder and harder to do that because most of us take our phones to our, as we head off to sleep, we take our phones with us and we are constantly looking through things on our phone, or we have the television on as right before we are sleeping, and we know blue light impacts our ability to sleep. So figuring out what it is that you can do for a period of time before you go to bed that does not involve you engaging with technology, and being able to wrap up your day so that you can get that healthy sleep in the night in order to start the next day fresh. We know sleep is important because it also helps us consolidate our memory. So it's critical we start paying attention to sleep habits. So just to wrap up, here are the things we've talked about today. Changing really how we think, feel, and act towards age and aging. Seeking help when there are changes in our cognitive abilities so that we can figure out what's going on. Seeking help if hearing is an issue. Staying cognitively engaged with activities that we enjoy. Staying socially engaged, either by engaging with colleagues, engaging with friends, family members, church groups, whatever brings you joy. Staying physically engaged, figuring out how to incorporate that extra exercise, and moving allows us to really build and boost our brain health. incorporating elements, food items that we know support brain health into our daily eating habits, managing stress, and really figuring out how to get into a healthy sleeping habit. All of these together boost our brain health. And I have one last slide to share, and this study is called FINGERS trial. It's the Finnish Geriatric Intervention Study to prevent cognitive impairment and disability. What this FINGERS trial is doing is exactly all the list of things that I just showed you. They had about 1,200 people, 60 to 77 years of age, do all of these things: stay cognitively engaged, eat a good diet, get exercise, monitor their heart health, and be socially engaged. And when people followed these healthy lifestyle and healthy practices, what they found was these older adults showed 25% improvement in their cognition, 40% improvement in their memory, 150% improvement in their ability to process information quickly, 83% improvement in their ability to really plan, organize, problem solve. All of these are called executive function. And there was a 60% reduction in chronic diseases. Right now, the FINGER trial is being implemented worldwide, and we will learn more about it. But we know that whatever I just shared actually works, and there is scientific basis for it. With that, I'm going to just stop right there and take any questions you might have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Raksha. So if someone is starting to show signs of age-related memory problems, is there a way to reverse it? I know there's a way to prevent it, but is there a way to reverse it?
It depends on what might be the underlying reason. I think we know that even if they're experiencing some changes in cognition that are concerning, even at that stage, following all these healthy brain habits protects them from further decline. And that's what we've learned through research. And that's the information we are gathering.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all your information. It was very interesting. I was wondering, do you find that working third shift, does that affect the brain at all? I know my husband and I have an argument about this because of the sleep schedule, you know?
Correct. We do know that the sleep cycle, when it gets altered, it does impact a person's ability to really have these normal, it impacts. So let me just say it impacts, but there are ways to mitigate it. So essentially, we create a cycle or a habit pattern, right? So sometimes it's just not possible to not work that third shift, or the shift in the night where all of the rest of our circadian rhythm is active, where we should be sleeping, but we still have to work because certain jobs require people to be awake. So some of the risks can be mitigated by eating right, getting some exercise. We are still learning how much can it be mitigated, but we do know that there is an impact, but we also know following brain healthy habits can be helpful. Does that help answer your question? I'm not sure if.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think there was a question on the chat. It said, do the inverted poses in yoga improve brain health?
Yoga per se, I don't particularly know about the poses, but I do know that yoga per se has been beneficial to brain health. Obviously, it's not an aerobic exercise, but what we really know about it is the fact that it allows you to pay attention, be mindful. All of those are things that directly impact, our cognitive health. So absolutely, but I'm not sure about the poses per se, so.
One other question from the chat, does getting outside and seeing the sun help?
Good question again. And we know that being outside and getting that vitamin D is essential and is going to maintain that balance. Absolutely. Being outside and interacting with nature. There are studies that are actually showing that green spaces, just walking in the park, just has its own benefits. Similarly, sitting out and interacting with the nature is supposed to have a positive benefit on our brain health. Great question.
Anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask Raksha, or they can put them in the chat, we can ask for you.
And feel free to email me if you don't want to ask the question here, or if you have any other questions, I'll get back to you, I promise. So here's my email. It's my first name @illinois.edu, raksha@illinois.edu.
So there are a few questions. One of them is, can you start after age 70?
Yes, and we have learned, and so that has been a misconception in the past, that after a certain age that there is no benefit. At any age we begin, research is showing that there is a benefit. You can support brain health at any age. And there's another question, is being outside and even exercising but alone helpful? Yes, just being outside and exercising, you're already doing two things, interacting with the nature and just getting those steps, definitely helpful. Any physical activity, again, there's misconception that you have to get on the treadmill, you have to run, any physical activity that you can do is going to be absolutely beneficial.
So Julie may be wrapping up for us, but we are at 101. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please do look up Raksha's work and information on the website.